The Nintendo 64 had some really amazing games released on it. It took us on some amazing adventures, taught us some really cool things about gaming, even revolutionized some genres of gaming going forward. In this video, we're going to look at 10 games that I have in my N64 collection. Number one in my N64 collection was one that I feel like had to be the first game I picked up when I started collecting for the system. It's gonna be Super Mario 64. I never had a Nintendo 64 as a kid, but I do remember all the hype behind it when it was being released. But in September of 1996, when it was being released in North America, we'd had the PlayStation 1 in our house at that point for almost a year. And I didn't know it at the time, but as I was begging my parents for an N64 for Christmas, my path in gaming was about to change. When I was a kid, my mom worked at a video rental store, so that N64 entered our house the same way that PlayStation 1 had before my parents bought it for us. One random Friday night, my mom came home with one of those great big console rental cases with the N64 inside and Super Mario 64 along with it. Now, the N64 might not have been a system that I owned as a kid, but it is a system that I have fond memories of. Putting Super Mario 64 in the system for the very first time and being greeted with that castle and that courtyard, it was an amazing moment for my good friend Mario. This was the moment that I got to test out Mario and the N64 for the very first time. Testing that 3D movement, testing those controls, picking up the coins, climbing the trees, learning to swim. I was amazed. Entering that castle blew my mind. All the doors and how the game was designed, it felt new at that point. As long as you had the stars to open the door, you could explore the world of Super Mario 64 how you wanted. Even in the levels you can explore. Bob-omb's Battlefield is a prime example of a level teaching you how to play by playing. From how the red coins are placed to the rotating platforms. The way it shows you the slide controls and that you're gonna have to explore these levels to collect all the coins. The first level is a tutorial without telling you it's a tutorial. That's one thing that I've always loved about the Mario games. I don't have to read a book or have some tutorial that I have to read or play. They just use the first couple of levels to teach you how to play, and then it's up to you to master those controls. This game was amazing. Now, back then in 1996, I only had that N64 in the house for that one weekend. But the fact that this game made such an impact on me as a kid means so much. When I got my first job in like 1998, an N64 was one of the first things I bought for myself. I picked it up from a pawn shop along with a couple of games, and even though my path had changed and I was more of a PlayStation player at that point in my life, playing around with the N64 with its atomic purple controller will always be a memory that I will love. And exploring that 3D world with my old friend Mario, sitting there on the floor in the living room with my eyes wide open in amazement, is always going to be a memory of this game that I'll cherish.
Yo, listen up.
We will not live in a two-dimensional world.
We won't go in one direction or zig where we can zag.
We will walk through walls. We will take a look around us.
We will not be confined.
We believe in the path of least limits.
We won't be told how to view the world.
We will experience true freedom.
We will not compromise.
We will live the game through our hands.
We will be in control of something.
We will change the system.
Now, again, this isn't a best of list, nothing like that. We're just looking at games that I have in my N64 collection. And number two is gonna be Cruis'n USA. Now, this is an interesting one. This one came out at a time that there was a bit of a drought in games for the N64, so I feel like a lot of people had this one. I can remember playing this at a friend's house for the very first time, sitting there thinking, I can't wait to be old enough to get my license, get a car, and go for a drive. Maybe drive across the country like I did in this one. In this one, we're driving across the United States. The graphics are pretty good for a game of its time. They do try to present some interesting landmarks as we're driving across America, but they're not presented all that well. This one doesn't have any laps. It's just a straight shot across the USA. We're driving from California to Washington, DC in this one. And it does try to pull off some cool and interesting tricks. Like when I'm driving across Iowa and I'm in first person mode and I have bugs splattering on the window. The controls in this one are pretty good. They're fairly tight, and it does do a really good job of giving that sense of speed that a lot of racing games really need to grab you. This is a fun one, definitely worth picking up. I'm glad I have this one in my collection. I'm excited to pick up the other 2 games that came out in that Cruis'n series on the N64. Cruis'n USA is gonna be number 2 in my N64 collection. Now, game number 3 in my N64 collection is going to be Perfect Dark. Now, the genre of shooters was kind of being redefined on the consoles at this time. I remember seeing Perfect Dark for the first time and thinking this was going to be an amazing game based on the name and the cover art. Perfect Dark is considered to be one of the best shooters on the platform. But when it comes to shooters on the N64, I feel like you fall on one of 2 sides of that coin. Either you love Perfect Dark or you love GoldenEye. And GoldenEye is number 4 in my N64 collection. Now, these 2 games both play amazingly. If you were a Bond fan, GoldenEye was probably for you. If you like that sci-fi setting, Perfect Dark might have been your game. Now, these are both games that we got from Rare, and while GoldenEye might have been a little more experimental and pushed us into what we have now, with Perfect Dark, Rare came in with a more refined game. But at the time, a lot of people were probably already hooked into GoldenEye. Both of these games came out at a time when a lot of us were in the process of growing up along with the Nintendo. We were hitting that university and college point of our lives. Looking back on these games make me feel like I started my youth with the NES. The NES was a system that was really in a time of youth for gaming. And then in our teens, we had the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis. And I feel like we were starting to define who we were as young adults through those consoles. A lot of people my age became adults with the N64 or the PS1. And these shooters were the perfect games for that moment. Playing GoldenEye or Perfect Dark multiplayer with new or old friends in a college dorm or that first apartment are memories a lot of us will always have and cherish. The fact that we got to grow up alongside these games, these systems, that's something that only those generations got to feel. And it's something that bonds a lot of us. These are both amazing games, whether it be playing against your friends as James Bond or taking out the bad guys in Perfect Dark. If you remember these games, I highly suggest picking either of them up and reliving those memories. Maybe sharing them with your kids.
Do you know how to use one of these?
GoldenEye. Load a rumble pack and see how it feels when 007 meets N64.
Number 5 in my N64 collection is going to be Mario Golf. Now, we had a lot of golf games before we got to this point, but Mario Golf is an amazing step forward. This is one where you need to take a second and look to really appreciate it. For an N64 game, they pulled off some really cool tricks, like the flying tee on tee off, or the shadow on the pin that moves based on where the sun is. Yeah, they did that in an N64 game. I wish golf in real life was as much fun as golf is on the N64. I really enjoy the Mario Golf series of games. I like that the characters all have their own stats and their own feel. The taunts and the animations make this game something fun and unique. Now, I can remember being 19 and being in college. It was Christmas break. We had a friend that went to university in Montana and he was back for the holidays. Now, his birthday was just before Christmas, and we decided to put together a little birthday party get-together since the whole gang was back in town. Now, you would expect at 19 years old that we would have went out partying or something, but that wasn't the case. One of the guys worked at a mom and pop video rental store, and we basically had free reign of that store after hours. The owner would let us hang out there after close, which honestly, we took full advantage of. They had TVs better than any of us could have had at home at the time, and an endless supply of new movies and games for us to play. I mean, you would have done it too, right? So for our friend's birthday, we all met up there after close, and we played video games until the sun came up. Mario Golf on the N64 was one of them, and those taunts, that sound that Yoshi made, filled the room non-stop. I can remember my buddy Lloyd getting so frustrated with our friend Matson for taunting him with Yoshi that he threatened his very life.
You do that one more time and I'm gonna kill you.
Only to be responded by with a moment of awkward silence and then followed by a closed rental store full of laughter as two friends chase each other up and down the aisles while the rest of us laughed about it. This is a great golf game. The HUD is fun and enjoyable. You can add custom characters from the Game Boy Color game using the transfer pack, which is something that is really quite unique, and the gameplay really holds up. This is one that is worth picking up if you enjoy golf, or if you've ever wanted to enjoy golf.
Nice shot.
Number 6 in my N64 collection is gonna be Micro Machines 64 Turbo. Now, I love the Micro Machine games on the NES and the Super Nintendo. And this is one where they kept that simplistic look that we had in those previous titles. This one, you either love it or you hate it. It's a game about track memorization, and it can be really frustrating with the hairpin turns and the speed of your car. But if you can figure it out, this one can be a really fun time. This one is a lot of fun multiplayer, as you can play up to 8 characters by sharing 4 controllers. Just be careful because this can get really competitive and controllers can get tossed. I'm glad they didn't do what everyone else was doing with the 3D gameplay, and they kept this one top down. The levels in these Micro Machine games are always interesting, even though we have seen the tabletop, the bathtub, and the pool table in every single one of them. I picked this one up because I love the other Micro Machine titles. And while it's frustrating to drive off the same tabletop at the same corner 100 times, this game is a lot of fun.
Micro Machine Man here with the Mini Micro Man. We're bringing you the super scoop on special auto supplies with a secret inside.
Wanna see? What's inside?
This brilliant battery opens to a simply secret airport with real runways, roadside rent-a-car, perfectly perfect pumps, amazing air traffic control center, passenger terminal, fantastic fold-down jetways, and a seriously secret express tunnel. And that's not all. This genuine-looking gas can holds a hidden mountaintop adventure with a great gas station, radical road ramp, super sightseeing restaurant, precise parking, and a real working elevator. See, it's not a secret anymore. And yet there's even more to see to this mountain scene, a secret place to store your Micro Machines. The Micro Machines secret auto supplies from Galoob. Remember, if it doesn't say Micro Machines, it's not the real thing.
Number 7 in my N64 collection is gonna be Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Now, I remember skipping school and going and watching Star Wars Episode 1 the day it was released. And really, was it worth it? Probably not for the movie, but for the memories for sure. And the most memorable part from the movie on that day was the pod racers. So when I finally got that N64 when I was 19, this one was a game I was very excited to pick up. This is an amazing racing game that takes us into that world of Star Wars pod racing. While the gameplay in this one doesn't have mechanics that really separate it from any of the other racers of the time, basically win the tournaments, unlock the secret characters and vehicles, rinse and repeat, this is a really great game. I feel it might be a little too easy. It feels more like time trials than a tournament race. I feel like I'm normally just in the lead, and then when I am in the heat of battle with another racer, we clip one another and one of us just crashes. The speed in this one is great. I love how fast this one feels. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer has some great visuals, and with that expansion pack, you can make this a really gorgeous game. I really like the touches they added with the upgrades, and I like that I can go to the junkyard and kind of risk it and get a part from there.
I got a lot of a junk.
This one has a following of people that love it to this day. There's even an option where you can plug a controller into port 1 and to port 3 and use both controllers' analog sticks to control both engines, which for me is just gonna make it so I crash twice as fast. Star Wars Episode 1 Racer is a super fun game, definitely one worth picking up if you're into Star Wars and have never played it.
It's the little human boy, born on Tatooine, Anakin Skywalker. Well, let's hope he can just finish the race.
Game number 8 in my N64 collection is gonna be Tetrisphere. Now this one became a hit on the N64, but is it really Tetris? This is a fun and interesting one where it has us matching like blocks by sliding them around and adding new blocks to break through this sphere layer by layer until we get to the center and free that robot. Each sphere in Tetrisphere has 3 different shaped blocks, and we need to drop the blocks and shift them to have 3 lined up and they'll explode. You're gonna want to move quickly though, because that sphere will start closing in on you and force that next drop. This one can be difficult, but it can also be a lot of fun. There are a few different modes we can play in this, with a puzzle mode, a tower mode, a hide and seek mode, and a head-to-head 2-player mode. It's the music in this one that is the real star of the show. It really adds to the gameplay and makes this a fun one. This might not be a Tetris game as we know it, but it's a great game to pick up and play. Game number 8 in my N64 collection is Tetrisphere. Game number 9 in my N64 collection is gonna be Superman. Yeah, I have Superman on the N64. But why? This game is tedious, it's graphically challenged, and it's clunky. Yeah, I'm just flying through rings. It's a Superman game. I'm Superman, the most powerful superhero there really is. I'm basically invincible unless I'm in the presence of some rock. And I'm flying through rings. And it is so difficult. Now, if you're willing to punish yourself long enough, there are 3 different gameplay styles. There's these infernal ring stages that are nearly impossible. There's also objective stages like escorting or saving somebody. And then there's the boss fights, which are the easiest part of the game. Because again, I'm Superman, I'm invincible. Take that, Brainiac. There are so many people that hate this game. Yeah, you could play multiplayer mode if you didn't want to have your friends ever come over again, but then it's just me and my friend flying through rings again. It's not good. This is widely considered to be one of the worst games of all time, across all consoles. But my good friend Mort over at Mort's Garage makes me want to play it. He even has a petition you can sign to get an HD remaster of this. So go check out Mort's Garage, because anyone willing to do something like that for a game like this might just be crazy enough to come up with something else amazing. Game number 10 in my N64 collection is an awesome game. It's gonna be Legend of Zelda, the Ocarina of Time. This is one that so many people love, and it took our friend Link in a revolutionary step forward. When you look at this game and compare it to some of the action-adventure games we have today, other than the graphics, this one holds up really, really well. In this one, we get reintroduced to our hero and the world. We meet Navi, who has become meme-worthy at this point. And while she is a great guidance system, her butting in all the time with advice is something we will all remember to this day. This is another one that teaches us as we go. We get taught a lot in Kokiri Forest with signs and NPCs that explain the game's mechanics and reward us for learning them. There are so many side quests and minigames that give us items and upgrades that a lot of the time they're optional. And a lot of the main items and upgrades that you need are rewards for learning a mechanic that you're gonna need to use in the future. The first dungeon is there again to teach us how to play by letting us play. It's interesting that in this one and the original Legend of Zelda on the NES, our first dungeon is a dying tree. This game is so well done The combat mechanics were revolutionary, to the point that some versions of the equipment, camera, and movement mechanics you can still find in modern third-person action-adventure games. The world building in this one really helped flesh out a lot of the races and characters we see in this series, even to this day in modern entries like Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. The Legend of Zelda games have always pushed that series in new and revolutionary ways. And this one took leaps and bounds forward when it came out. Now this one I've never played all the way through. It's actually next on my list as I try to play through all the Legend of Zelda games. And it's one that I'm really happy to have in my N64 collection. This is one that I can't wait to play all the way through and finally experience.